Imagine the scenario. You've worked your entire life, but you're ready to retire. So you retire and you have what you think is the perfect retirement plan to get you through the rest of your retirement. But then the market takes an unexpected turn. What could that mean for your retirement situation? There are a couple of different scenarios we're going to play out as Sam Lang and I discuss on this episode of After the Paycheck. Hey, this is Adam Bly, host of After the Paycheck here at Rubino & Lang Wealth Partners. Today I am joined with Sam Lang, CEO and founder of Rubino & Lang Wealth Partners.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It gets harder and harder for me to say every time.
Thank goodness you're not the receptionist, Adam.
I know, right? Yeah. Oh, I could be terrible on the phones, but I am enjoying being the host here of the series, which is
doing a great job.
Great. Thank you very much. And in this episode, we wanted to talk a little bit more about the scenario that we painted was if you're somebody who was recently retired, there's a lot going on in the world right now.
Sure.
There's ups and downs, lefts and rights, cats and dogs living together. And there's, who knows, people that are still retiring today. We recently discussed people that are pushing off retirement, but there are people that feel pretty confident that, hey, I think I can retire today. And good on them, and things are great, and you might have a retirement plan that you think is perfect, but then, who knows what happens? A market crash happens. What would happen, or what are some scenarios where how would that affect your retirement accounts today?
Not a good situation. If that
No,
would happen,
not at
right?
all.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, retirement by itself, I think, is a hard enough task.
Mm-hmm.
But you put that under current circumstances, it becomes really harder.
Right.
I mean, there's so much going on. We got an election coming on. We have very low interest rates for quite some time now. I don't really see it going back up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just a lot of unrest and uncertainty in the world. So I think there's a lot of people out there in the commonplace, in the professional field that are feeling, hey, what happens if another market crash like a 2008 were to happen?
Right.
And like you said at the beginning of the episode, I thought this was going to be great. I already have my plane ticket booked to go to Florida, and I put a down payment on the condo that I was gonna enjoy, and then all of a sudden, your money goes from here to here. So the good news is you can do something about it, and hopefully you have a written retirement plan. You have sort of a blueprint as to what things are going to look like. Not only when every day is just perfect, but also to make sure that you're going to be okay, and you've sort of tested what's going to happen if you do have a pullback in the marketplace. Right. But if you don't have that, there are a few things that could happen. One, we've talked about it before, the sequence of returns risk. Yep. We can talk a little bit more about that, which is exactly that. The market doesn't do this, but it does that, and you need to pull money out. It becomes a problem. It's a really slippery slope. The second thing is really liquidity risk. You might have certain assets that are tied up. We'll talk about that, like maybe real estate. Yep. That now you need them to be illiquid, but it's not like you can sell the water heater. Right. And then inflation. Inflation is one of those sort of silent things that eat away at our ability to enjoy life. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Perfect. So to kind of go a little bit more into detail for each three of those, what could a market crash mean if my retirement accounts aren't balanced in that sense? So if I don't have that retirement plan, what could sequence of returns risk mean, or what does it do?
Well, listen, if you don't need the money, if you don't need to pull money out of your retirement funds, which not too many people can say today.
Right.
I think, a market crash or market correction, as we know, things that go down will eventually come back up, and you just sort of leave it alone. So if you're in your 40s and you don't need the money for 20 years, it's probably a different situation than some of the things that we're talking about right now. Like I retired, 2 months ago, and then all of a sudden 2008 happened again. Right. And if that were to happen, then essentially your money needs to work harder for you if you're in the market to give you the same ability to draw money out. Right. So what do I mean by your money working harder? So as an example, imagine if you needed $40,000 a year in addition to maybe your Social Security, maybe you're fortunate enough to have a little bit of a pension, but you needed to pull out $40,000 a year out of your retirement savings. And we'll just call it $1 million. Okay. All right. So that's a 4% withdrawal rate.
Yep.
The market corrects. $1 million now, because it's all in the market,
Right.
goes from $1 million to $800,000.
Okay. 20% hit.
So now you still need the 40 grand because really nothing has changed.
Right.
So instead of earning 4%, now you need to earn 5%. So now your money has to work harder. That's what I was talking about.
Right.
It has to work harder, and it puts really additional strain on the probability of success of that actually happening.
Gotcha.
We've had instances where people have shared stories with us that they retired, they had $1 million, they were fine, and they've been spending probably a little bit more than they should have, and then all of a sudden they lived through, in just recently, about a decade ago, in 2008, and by the time everything like the dust has settled, they have, call it, $650,000 left.
Right.
So now to get the same amount of money, you don't have the same pool of money to start with.
Right.
That's when it has to work harder.
Yeah. And you're withdrawing from it at that time too, because you're already in retirement. I think that's a big psychological disconnect people have, is they're thinking like, oh, I can always replenish my 401k, but you don't have a paycheck anymore.
You don't have a paycheck
so
anymore.
You can't replace
exactly.
that. Right.
You're not going up the mountain. You're coming down the mountain.
Yep.
So you're not accumulating. You're actually taking withdrawals,
right.
which is an entirely different scenario. Which
right.
is why it's really important to sort of plan for that. I mean, planning for growing your money is one thing, but planning for having, reliable income in retirement is an entirely different story.
Gotcha. And that kind of leads us on into another hardship that might happen in retirement, which is liquidity options. So let's say you don't want to pull from your 401k options currently because the market did take a downturn.
Yeah, you don't want to lock in a loss.
Exactly,
right.
Lock in the loss. Thank you.
Lock
so you look
loss.
at other avenues from where you might be able to pull money, but there's liquidity hardships in other places where you might be diversified.
There's always risk.
Right.
There's risk in pretty much everything we do in life by
right.
stepping off the sidewalk onto the street.
Mm-hmm.
We see people that have invested heavily into the real estate market.
Okay.
And that's great.
Yep.
It's only going to always go up. Well, if you live in Boston or live in any metropolitan, major city, that might be a little different today.
Right.
Just recently, my son moved to, he goes to Boston University,
yep.
as you know, and the last minute he says, I don't want to live in dorm, I want to get into an apartment. And we looked at an apartment that was, between him and his buddies, I think it was like $4,000 a month.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, that's a lot of money. And we were able to talk the guy down to $3,300 a month, like literally like that, because there was so much argument. Nobody's going back.
Right.
Wow. So just imagine if you were that guy and you were depending on collecting $4,000 a month, and that's like really tight. You need that $4,000 a month, and now all of a sudden, the demand isn't there.
Right.
So you got a problem. So sometimes we see people that have, they want to keep their money safe, right? So they go to the bank and they buy a 5-year CD, earning, today it's almost laughable how much you're earning. Yeah. But if you need to get to that money, you can pull it out, pay a penalty, we get that. But there's certainly liquidity risk when it comes to that. So I think, as we always talk about, just having monies set aside for different places, for different purposes and specific outcomes, that's really important.
I think going back to the rental income situation, not only is your rental income down, but also the value of your house is also depreciated too, right? So if you wanted to sell off that house, you might be taking a hit, or you wouldn't be getting, like you said, as much as you thought, because you thought real estate's only going to go up.
That's right. I mean, listen, I live in a home. That's my house. If the market dropped and my real estate used to be worth $600,000, now it's worth $500,000. Listen, I still need a place to live, right? So I'm just going to stay right here. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to sell at a loss when I know I could get more, maybe just wait it out.
Right.
But if you need the money, that's an entirely different story.
Right.
So sometimes people, that's why there's that word diversification.
Right.
We just need to have enough monies in different places to do that specific job and specific outcome.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, I'm thinking more like in that essential expenses. So if all of a sudden you needed money to pay off your house, and you have rental income, but like I said, the market has tanked. You don't want to touch your 401ks. You're looking at your rental income, which is now only 2/3 of what it was initially, and you're like, oh, I'm going to be short that $700 a month. it's hard to find places to
I mean,
to
when
make
we
that
meet
move.
folks, we talk to folks that may call in from the radio or what have you, and the conversation ends up going towards the direction of, listen, where am I going to get money from retirement? We are always huge proponents and advocates of just understanding it's not always growing the money, right? Having wonderful returns is one thing, but having consistent returns is really important.
Right.
And just when you're in retirement, I can't overemphasize how important it is to have an income plan, to have that income bucket.
Right.
That hey, no matter what, if the Dow's at 30,000 or at 20,000, I'm going to be okay, and I'll have money to, pay my bills.
Right.
Right. Back in the day with pensions, I mean, different story. Today's
You don't have that.
You don't have that. It's trying
Right.
times.
Yeah, you do. You bring up the three-legged stool. The pension, Social Security, and your personal finances. And one of the stools for a lot of people is gone. That pensions bucket. People are confused about what Social Security benefits might be in a few years. And then what we're talking about today is your personal finances and what could happen if something goes awry.
And listen, what goes up is going to come down.
Right.
What goes down is going to come back up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no secret that there's volatility in the marketplace, and it's always going to be there. It's just a matter of sort of where you are in your life. Are you working? You're retired? Do you need the money? And if you do, you just need to have, again, we go back all the time about having a plan.
Right.
And there's just so many things that can just really come and just wreak havoc to that plan.
Right. And these episodes aren't designed to scare people into the idea that, oh my goodness, it's more of a hey, here's a situation you could be in and how to overcome that, which is what we're getting to right now. Which
also
is
just being realistic about life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Life happens.
Life happens.
Yeah.
Life happens.
Our new motto. That's going on my bumper sticker. So let's go into, you have inflation exposure, which was the third thing that you brought up. But we kind of already covered that a little bit, but just to kind of really dig in and go into more.
Yeah, you look back in the day, I always remember my dad always said, when you're working, buy dividend stocks, the blues, and you'll be okay. And then, Sam, when you retire, go and park your money at the bank because it's safe, it's insured, it's great. Just get a 5-year CD. You'll get 5% a year, and you live off that interest, and it'll be fine. That's not a true statement anymore. You look at interest rates. It's
You're lucky to get 0.5% in some places.
Yeah, probably in my adult lifetime, in my mid-50s, and it's probably as low as it'll ever be.
Right.
So that's not keeping up with inflation.
Right.
So you have CDs are great. Again, nothing wrong with them. But if you're depending on that, not only to take income, but to keep up inflation, listen, you better look someplace else.
Right.
So that's one of the things that, again, making sure that you have a well-balanced portfolio. And that's why, myself and John and Ryan, that's what we strive to do, is to make sure that everybody's well-balanced.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, if I'm that person that's recently retired, and my thought process was exactly what you said your dad said to you, is I'm just going to park it all in the bank, and the market does take a downturn, and there's rates are, we're already at a point where rates are so low, but they can't get much lower.
I was going to say, can they go much lower?
But yeah, you can't just keep up with inflation by having all of your money in an account like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So then that kind of goes to the way to kind of overcome or really have that balance in your retirement plan, is understanding that there's, and you call it the 3-bucket approach. And what are those 3 buckets?
Yeah, so again, I used those words, specific outcomes and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly why we designed it this way, the 3 buckets.
Yeah.
Each bucket is meant to do a certain thing, and each bucket has a specific outcome, right? So the first bucket is really the liquidity bucket, making sure you have enough money liquid that you can get your hands on. If you don't have that and you're approaching retirement, maybe look at how much you're contributing into your 401k and maybe just sort of stop and make sure that liquidity bucket is plentiful.
Okay.
Because if you are in retirement, and let's say you have 2 years worth of living expenses in that bucket, and the market takes a downturn, and you were going to take money out of your 401k, which is mostly in the market,
right,
but now it's worth 25% less.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say you don't have to worry, but at the precise moment, you know exactly where your money's going to come from to pay your bills, because you have that built-in liquidity bucket.
Yep.
So that's the first bucket.
Okay.
The second bucket, again, we talk a whole lot about income,
Yep.
is to make sure that you have enough money set aside that that the specific purpose of that second bucket is to give you that reliable monthly income.
Right.
You know, back in the day, we used to call it mailbox money.
Yep.
Today, it just goes right into your account. Right? Automatic deposit.
Well, yeah, what's a mailbox?
Yeah, what's a mailbox? What's a check? So that bucket is really important, again, because we don't want to rely on having the market do really well, and it has to continually do quite well in order to pull off the profits and pay the bills, or pay the real estate tax, or maybe go on vacation. We want that to be automatic.
Right.
So that's where that income bucket is. And it's not, and sometimes people use different asset classes, different tools, but you really can't judge that bucket by the rate of return. Right. It's not designed to give you double-digit returns, or to make you feel, wow, I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm smart. I pick the right fund. It's designed to give you an income stream.
Right.
Okay. And then that third bucket, again, very important. You talked about inflation. We know things are going to cost more and more and more. That's why we need to keep up with that, and we need to earn a really, a decent rate of return.
Yeah.
But in that bucket, chances are things are going to be not always, this way. It's going to go like this. It's going to go like this.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we have enough exposure to get a good rate of return.
Right.
Like in my case, I have a Fidelity account. It's mutual funds and ETFs. There are some days I don't want to look at the statement because I know it went down. Right. It's not a surprise. I already know. But at the same time, if I'm depending on taking money out, I'm not depending on that third bucket.
Right. I think that's where working with a financial advisor really helps. It takes the emotion out of that aspect of it, because if I'm looking at accounts and they're all dropping right now and I'm panicking, I might want to pull the trigger and be like, the ceiling's coming out of this thing. I'm coming out. And like you said, I've lost all opportunity for growth, now I have to re-enter the market with this growth bucket, and I might be so far behind that I can't keep up with inflation.
Precisely. I mean, I think it's really important, and we use this word education all the time. I think if you're looking for, a personality and attribute from somebody that's going to help you with the retirement, you want to make sure that person's helping you understand why, right? Being educated first.
Why? Yes.
Why?
What's the why?
Why do I have 3 buckets? Why can't I get away with 2 buckets?
Right.
Or why 3 and why not 4 buckets?
Yep.
So understanding why you have money designed for specific purposes, I think, is really important. And to your point, working with somebody in the retirement planning space that really understands retirement.
Right.
Where we've been doing this a long time, quite some time, and it's not always just about making money. It's about understanding. Retirement is not just making money. It's about lifestyle.
Right.
It's about making sure that you can weather the sunny days and the hurricanes. It's about making sure it can take you through retirement longevity. Retirement is like, if you think about purchases, it's probably the biggest purchase of your life. Yeah. Because it might be 20 years, 25, 30 years.
Yeah. Wow. So if I'm somebody who is DIYing this, right? I'm taking everything that we're talking about today. Okay, I'm going to restructure my retirement plan to be a 3-bucket approach system. How often should I be monitoring and looking at all of that stuff to make sure that I'm properly balanced at all times?
Well, listen, at a minimum, a few times a year. I mean, if you're looking at yourself, you go on your account and you look at it every day. I mean, we know plenty of people that do that.
Yeah.
But that's probably overkill. It's not going to really change anything from day to day. Perfect. But if you have a relationship with an advisor, at a minimum, a couple of times a year. Yeah. Like in our company, it's probably more like quarterly. Yep. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, when you're working with somebody, the idea is to have a plan that works for you, so you don't have to. Sure. Kind of mentality. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Sneaky. But yeah, I just want to. I'm thinking of the DIY. If I'm listening to this episode, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try and. I am someone who recently retired. I want to make sure that I'm not exposed if the market does crash. And this is my how-to step: is create a liquidity bucket or identify a liquidity bucket. Kind of that fixed asset bucket in that growth bucket, and just make sure that I can do what I can to balance.
I think it's really important. We've worked with we've met plenty of do-it-yourselfers along the way, and some do become clients because they realize, hey, listen, I could be a great mechanic or a great engineer, or in some cases we have this is a good example. We have a great client. He's a surgeon.
Oh, wow.
He's a heart surgeon. I mean, super smart guy.
Yeah.
But he knows what he's good at. And he said to me many years ago, and we've had a relationship for a dozen or so years, and he said, listen, we save lives, we're smart, but when it comes to this, we don't really know what's going on. That's why I need a professional relationship with you guys.
Yep.
So when you're working with somebody, I think sometimes it really helps open your eyes to things that maybe you've never seen before or you're not aware of.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
Sam, thank you very much for the time today. I appreciate this. This was really good.
Too,
I know, I like that. I'll start wearing the blazer to work too. If you have any questions for Sam, John, or Ryan, and you're not at afterthepaycheck.com already, head over there now and you can fill out the form on the bottom and ask your question. And if you have not already subscribed to future episodes of After the Paycheck, you can also do that wherever you get your podcasts or at afterthepaycheck.com. Until next time, take care.